Hi, everybody. It's the waitingfornextyear.com podcast. I'm your host, Craig Lindell, and today, the irrelevant Cavaliers are only relevant because of the dysfunction and the weird things that they're doing. They lose their coach after 50-some games, John Beilein, an old man coach who the Cavaliers decided to hire out of the college ranks for their super young team, mixed with Kevin Love and Tristan Thompson, fails his way out of the NBA in such spectacular fashion. He wanted out so badly that he didn't even force the team to fire him. I guess it's more honorable that way. Reminds me a little bit of Travis Fryman saying, well, I can't play, so I didn't earn the rest of my contract, and just walking away. But the Cavaliers, I mean, they're the story, right? So their owner has a stroke in the offseason. They somehow come to the decision to hire John Beilein out of the college ranks with this team of players. And I'll remind you that I said of Garland and Sexton before the season began, they are so young that when you add their ages together, or at least when you did add their ages together, they were still younger than me. Still younger than me. So I'm not sure what the plan was. How did they ever expect this to work? Did they expect John Beilein to come in and put a system in place that would maximize the fortunes of the Cavaliers because they would play system ball? John Beilein was complaining about his inability to install his coaching concepts early on. And that's not the league. The league is loose concepts, matching the players to your style, but it's not like you're running a motion, you know. You're not running. We saw with David Blatt that you weren't going to be able to run the UCLA offense or this, that. I mean, what are you even talking about? Ultimately, whether it's Kevin Love, LeBron James, your players are on the court. They're the ones who are basically going to decide how you play basketball. So then what's left for a coach is to set rotations, draw up inbounds plays and special plays like that, and manage personalities. That's really what it comes down to. The coach of an NBA team is not really coaching in any way the same way that they do in college. You know, you can have a system like Purdue that wins because of the coach and the system and not necessarily just because of the talent. But in the NBA, the egos of the players is so big and they have so much control that's what decides everything. Yeah, you can put in you can hint at some things as an NBA coach, but you can't control an NBA game. You can't. You can control the lineups to some degree, and you can draw up inbounds plays. But even then, we've seen over the years with LeBron, if the inbounds play wasn't something that the players felt comfortable in who was taking the final shot, they would just steamroll the coach. They would steamroll the coach. It doesn't matter how brilliant you are as a coach, you have to have that buy-in. You have to be able to manage those egos. And that's what that NBA job is. The reason why college coaches don't make it in the NBA isn't because they're not good coaches. They are good coaches. It's a different position. It's like saying, you know, if you're a business owner, you can run Amazon. Like, you're both business owners, right? Like, not really. And high school coaches, not all high school coaches end up being great college coaches because high schools, on most high schools, don't get to recruit. And recruiting's such a huge part of the college game. And so it's not the same job. It's not the same job. Some college coaches can come in and coach in the NBA. No doubt about it. They've fashioned their college programs very much like NBA programs. They're managing NBA-type egos. And so that transition can work. But that's not John Beilein. That was never John Beilein. So in hindsight, it makes you wonder what their plan was. What were they thinking? What was John Beilein thinking? What was Kobe Altman thinking? Sounds like Dan Gilbert wasn't even involved. But Dan Gilbert sure is involved now, making the change after just 50-some games. And the Cavaliers are just as big a disaster as the Cleveland Browns, kind of. This is something that, I crack my jokes too. John Beilein stepping down just like Freddie Kitchens, quote-unquote, stepped down. I mean, this dude got fired. Make no mistake about it. He might have wanted out too, and they might have negotiated a departure, a settlement agreement. But in essence, he got fired. We all know what that is. But so anyway, people want to compare this to the Browns because the number of coaches and the number of years is astonishing. It's awful. It's disgusting. It's dysfunctional. But guess what? Just like the college coaching position is not the same as the NBA coaching position, the gravity of changing NBA coaches is nowhere near to the level of an NFL coaching change. Nowhere near. NFL coaches do have systems. NFL coaches do drive culture. They've got way more players. They've got an inspirational ability week to week. The season's not the same kind of grind. It's a grind, but it's not the same kind of grind. It's totally different. And there are how many coaches on a coaching staff? Every day it feels like we're hearing about Kevin Stefanski hiring another assistant. And certainly the Cavaliers have tons of assistants too, but we're talking about, a dozen players, not 50-some. We're talking about 8 to 10 coaches, not 20 coaches. We're talking about, yes, you can have an offensive coordinator and a defensive coordinator in basketball, but it's just not the same thing. It's not the same thing at all. You don't install in the NBA the way you do in the NFL. There's not that much difference. You can play a little bit faster. You can. All the teams run the pick and roll. All the teams have offenses that are designed to produce 3-point shots. But it's just not the same thing. So comparing, this is not that big of it. It's a big deal. It's embarrassing for the Cavaliers. You would certainly prefer any alternative to the level of turnover they've had in their coaching staff. But in terms of a 1 to a 10, where the worst coaching change you can go through is in the NFL, and that's a 10. 1 year of a head coach in the NFL is the worst possible situation. That's a 10 out of 10 in the worst thing that you can have. Changing NBA coaches, swapping out David Blatt is like a 6, a 5. Swapping out John Beilein, especially on a team that's already this bad, that had no expectations in any reality, it's a 4. It's a 3, 4, 5, somewhere around there. Who cares? Does anybody think that John Beilein being out really, other than a little bit in terms of motivation of these players, they might be a little bit more motivated now that he's gone because they didn't like him. Does anybody think that this has an impact on the game whatsoever? You saw what happened in the middle of the season when the Browns fired Hugh Jackson. That had a big impact. The Cavaliers are what they are, and it's about players. It's about talent. It's not about schemes or coaching. The NBA is barely about schemes or coaching. It's certainly barely about schemes or coaching when you're at the stage of rebuild or whatever you want to call what the Cavaliers are doing, because nobody really knows what the Cavaliers are doing. So yeah, that's that. The other thing, and this kind of plays off a rant I had a couple weeks ago where the Cavaliers were getting smashed by national reporters for the Andre Drummond trade because the national NBA media is fed. It's an extended arm of the NBA Players Association because they're basically fed by player agents. Well, that's the same thing happening here. This morning, and I don't mean to call him out, he just happens to be our local guy, but Jason Lloyd had been working on these reports with Shams Charania, however you pronounce his name. So he'd been working on that report with him, and then he drops a mini bomb this morning, and he says, Andre Drummond was traded for just a couple weeks ago, and he's already been on record behind the scenes, rumored to say, if Beilein's here next year, I'm gone. And by the way, that's the same agent. Andre Drummond and Kevin Love share an agent. And so now that Jason Lloyd says that, and we hear that, and you look at all the information, all the negative talk in the NBA back channels, the NBA media about John Beilein since the beginning of the season, where do you think that came from? I mean, this is what we're talking about. So we don't really talk about the games. We don't talk about NBA players playing games. But we're constantly engrossed in the NBA rumor mill. Constantly. And it's always up against the coaches. It's always up against the owners. It's always pro player. And that's because the people who are talking the most are NBA player agents. I'm not hating anybody for it. I'm just saying, you got to understand it. And so if you're the next coach of the Cavaliers, you better be player friendly. You better be player agent friendly. You better just, you serve them. They're one of the biggest stakeholders of you keeping your job and making the rest of your salary. If you want to serve out all 4 years of your contract and get the 5th year option picked up as an NBA head coach, you better be player first. You are not going to get into a pissing match with a star. You're not going to get into a pissing match with a high draft pick who's not yet a star. You better bend over backwards to be the best friend of the players. And more importantly, you better create a pipeline for those player agents to talk to you. If I'm Dan Gilbert, I make an agent my GM. If I'm Dan Gilbert, I consider making an agent my coach, a former agent my coach. Because, honestly, that's half the battle. You have to see what happened to the Knicks last year, right? The Knicks thought that they had New York. They had the market, that Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving wanted to play. But they weren't player friendly enough. They had an owner who was so bad and so awful that nobody wanted to go there. And guess what? That's what the Cavaliers have too. Nobody wants to be there. Nobody trusts Dan Gilbert. Nobody trusts this front office. It's not player friendly enough. You have to create the ultimate country club. And if you have to do that in a place like LA, you have to do it even more so in a place like Cleveland. Now, I'm not telling you have to like it. I'm not telling you have to be an NBA fan. In fact, I've told you time and again that league has passed me by because I want to be a Cavaliers fan. I don't want to be an NBA fan. I don't want to be a fan of NBA stars. And it's not our league. It's not my league. I'm a Cavaliers fan. I grew up a team fan. I want to root for the team that has Cleveland on the front of the jersey. That's what I want to do. Might not be for me. Might not be for you. I'm just trying not to be mad about it, reality, I can't control it. I just have to recognize reality for what it is. This is not the same league that I thought I was rooting for as a kid. It might have been the same back then too. I don't even know. But I'm here to tell you. It's a player first league. Until further notice, it will remain a player first league. And you don't have to like it, but you gotta get used to it. If you're gonna be a fan, you gotta understand it, you gotta accept it. It's just how it is. John Beilein had to accept it, and that's why he made the decision he made to get out to get out, to leave money on the table. He didn't even care. Keep your money. Just pay me for this year and I'm gone. Just pay me for this year and I'm gone. We'll see how it plays over the long run. I think you can say John Beilein was honorable in leaving the money. I think it's funny. I think it makes for a very good punchline that he left the money on the table. But that's what it is. That's where we are. That's where the Cavaliers are. Someday we can talk about what the path might look like for the Cavaliers to get back to playoff level, let alone championship level. But honestly, like if there was a path that you and I could see, it would make this league a lot more fun. A lot more fun. At this point, you're playing the player lottery, and it's not a true lottery because the winners are picked. LeBron James picked Cleveland. Actually, the Cavaliers drafted LeBron James, but LeBron James picked Cleveland and delivered a championship. LeBron James picked LA and could deliver a championship. Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving picked Brooklyn and could deliver a championship. Kevin Durant picked Golden State to put those guys over the top and delivered championships. And that's the league until further notice. That's the league until further notice. So, that's all I got. It's kind of a fun NBA season, huh? Wasted year of our lives if you're a Cavaliers fan. But that's how it goes. That's how it goes. So, I don't even know if it's fascinating, but it gives us something to talk about. Otherwise, we'd just be talking about, what, a 14-win team at the All-Star break, a 14-win team. Penny. I would give, not a penny, I'd give $1,000 to be there for John Beilein's exit speech, if he's even to give one, if he's going to say goodbye to everybody. So, all right, I'm rambling. Thanks so much for listening. We got the Dairy Brothers coming up this week, talking Tribe. We'll talk to you next time. It's been the Waiting for Next Year.com podcast.